Hello, everyone, and welcome to another national edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. You know what I got to tell you? We were just in Cape Town, South Africa recently for the South African Jazz Festival. We visited Poorasmoor, went up to Johannesburg. You know what I realized? Too often, Africa is discussed in extremes, either crisis or opportunity or safari. And I asked myself, what is the most misunderstood reality about the continent today? So I had to invite my posse on. Scott Bolden, my man, there he is. MARCIA DYSON, oh, my heart, heart's just good as gold. And so I'm gonna start with MARCIA, because I know MARCIA spends a lot of time on the continent. And let me welcome you, look fabulous. I know you need me to tell you that, so you look fabulous. So I'm sorry if I feel good today. I'm feeling good because I got my posse with me. So, MARCIA, if you had to describe the continent's trajectory in one word, economic, political, and culture, what would it be and why?
Well, first of all, the continent of Africa, the 55 countries that comprise that continent, are indispensable in the global economy, which impacts, therefore, you and I, people in the Middle East, South America, the Caribbean, and all. Only because of the resources, first of all, that it has that are very important to the oil industry for energy, especially during this particular crisis, from the resources from Nigeria and Angola. It also is very keen as far as the platinum that is utilized to drive the EV vehicles that Elon Musk definitely needs, and also with the minerals that it has, the diamonds and others that are very important for the aerospace and other dynamics to which we use to thrive here in the United States. But more importantly, what we have to realize is most people would say poor Africa. There's nothing poor about Africa than there is any other continent or country in the world, and that is its leadership. And what I do love, having worked for the continent very long, I had personal relationships with a lot of the leaderships of Rwanda, Senegal, South Africa, Ghana, of course, where I have a very special interest, that they know that in order to turn the tides for them, that they have to themselves sort of come together as a coalition and monitor themselves, which a former leader wanted to do. And they're doing it. And sometimes when you do that, you get a pushback from the former countries that used to occupy you, which is often the problem that undermines you once you try to stabilize yourself, as we see in Burkina Faso and Senegal. But what I want to say for Africa is that the whole world benefits from its resources. And the test is putting is, why is China there? Why is Russia there?
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because, Scott, Africa is increasingly a battleground influence between our country, China, and Russia. And who is actually, in your opinion, because I know you spent a lot of time there, delivering results on the ground, and who is simply making promises? And are these African nations leveraging this global competition to their advantage, or are they at risk of repeating cycles of dependency?
I don't think that they're at risk for repeating cycles of dependency. I think for the first time in the history of the continent, you have the U.S. that's making promises to be there, China and Asia countries who are there, making an economic difference, investing in East and West and South and North Africa. Whenever you go to Africa, you see a heavy Chinese population. And of course, Russia is there for political purposes and simply because they want to be there when America just makes promises. I think America is sleeping on Africa for all the reasons my colleague gave you. But the one thing that China is doing, China, with their own people, not our African people, from what I can observe, is building many parts of the infrastructure in Africa, and they've begun to trade not just politics, but military hardware with these African countries in exchange for infrastructure buildup. I think America is sleeping on it. America isn't really deep into Africa, despite all the promises that have been made, and they may have some representation there economically and politically, but all we do is promise, and I think we've let the Chinese really go deeper into Africa to be closer and to produce the infrastructure as well as the resources there, while we've been sleeping probably because of the color of Africa and the color of the skin of Africans, which are multi-layered and multicultured across the whole continent.
You know, Marcia, but what price do they pay with China's deepening influence and building their infrastructure?
First, I want to address what Scott said.
No, before you address that, I need you to address China, because we got a minute, and I'll come back to that.
What is it?
What price are they paying, allowing China to invest in their infrastructure and also in their monetary system?
Because they needed it. They needed someone who didn't bring just...
But what's the price? What's the price?
So they needed that infrastructure in order to grow, something that other countries, including our country, did not do. They brought temporary support as far as that. China brought in their cavalry, they brought in their own materials, and yes, they brought in their population, but they helped build railroads, highways, and other things that they needed in order for Africa to become attractive as an investment by other countries, which we missed out on via even AGOA, which we refused to extend longer than this coming December.
You didn't answer my question, though, but I'm going to take a break and come back.
All right.
We'll be back, okay? Thank you. Yeah. Strategically, Scott, what price are we as a nation paying for not investing long-term in the continent?
Across the board. We just simply have missed the opportunity to invest in Africa. You were asking Marcia, what's the cost of Africa? The real question is, what does it cost America? It's cost America in relationships, political and economic. It's cost us the lack of investment in infrastructure and resource development, right? It's cost us in money-wise going through other countries who are extracting those resources. And so the real price is what it has cost America, and I would say a great deal. And I think it's really rooted in race. It's not rooted in economics and politics, because if we didn't want the Chinese there, if we wanted to be there strong, we'd be there. It doesn't take that hard. It's like DEI. You know, it's not hard to balance or to invest in DEI.
But George Bush did invest, so you can't say it's all about race.
Pardon me?
George Bush gave billions of dollars. He's still legendary all throughout the continent of Africa, Marcia.
Hold on. Giving money versus having a presence there.
They did have a
and
presence.
long-term investment
More
there.
of a presence than what we have now.
Building infrastructure there is not simply investing in Africa. You want to be a partner with Africa. We would be a stronger country had we had a stronger partnership and a willingness to be there. We simply don't have it, and the Chinese have filled that vacuum. That's not a debatable answer. That's reality.
You know, Marcia, several African economies are among the fastest growing in the world, yet inequality remains staggering. Why hasn't growth translated into broad prosperity?
Well, first of all, they have been behind the eight ball. We had to look at most of the African countries were only liberated in the late to mid-60s, right? So they need time to grow. And often when you occupy, you take on some of that burden, or you take on some of that inferiority that your former occupiers have placed in you. And then I see them as toddlers on the stage of economic growth. So I give them that little time, because it took Europe centuries in order to understand what civilization is. And I'm not saying that as an homonym, I'm saying that as history. And they became wealthy off of the resources that only the continent and India could give. So fast forward, now you have the coalition of the leadership of the Africa are starting to look at what America said, pull up yourself by your bootstraps. And when they do, we find ways to undermine them, to say that you have poor leadership. But with that in face, to show you what Scott was saying, you don't call it DEI, but whenever the government closed down everything important to the stability of Africa, including bilateral trade, you can grow things in Africa that has raw materials that they will not disallow in our trade agreements, that for you to not be able to actually manufacture, which Africa leadership are pushing back on now. They want to be able to take their raw materials and manufacture whatever other countries may do, which is a growth segment. Also, AGOA was important, that it took a long time for us to get an extension of AGOA, which is equal trade, so that the countries of Africa can have a tax-free duty, because they are behind the eight ball, as we were as Black people in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when we had the wherewithal to do trade, and not only to trade, but to even sell amongst ourselves. So the fact that they took an extension only to December 26th, then put the world in a crisis as far as Africa trade is too. So America did a lot of things. And in addition, the impact of USAID, which added up to the fertility of the women, which added to the food substance for the poorer African countries as far as their economic growth in the outbacks of their countries, also impacted the possibility of you being a great a counter partner and also a great trade partner as well. All those things come in factor. And for me, Africa is not in a crisis. It is in a transition. It's defining the role of governance, economics, and global influences. And I'm cheering them on.
So, Scott, how should investors think about opportunity without ignoring systemic risk? I mean, energy, resource, and global stakes.
Well, you use the terminology systemic risk. It's no more systemic risk than investing in doing business in Africa than it is in Eastern Europe or Western Europe. You just have a perception that it is. Now, our African brothers and sisters have to make it easy to invest in Africa and easy to get your return on that investment. But some of the barriers in regard to access to capital are because of American regulations and on international trade and what have you. Both sides have to be fearless in their investment and from a regulatory standpoint, make it easy to invest and make it easy to get a return, because it's the upside is a win-win for both American investors as well as Africa. And Africa wants strong partners. They're not partners with the Chinese simply because they prefer Chinese over the United States of America. They're partners with Chinese because the Chinese have invested in that partnership. Whatever the return is, America's got to get over it being, quote, the dark continent. It's a continent rich in resources, and in the right partnership with the U.S. could be a stronger country, despite our American belief that, you know, we're number one in, you know, American exceptionalism. We're not the only country that can be that.
Africa is definitely not the dark continent. We spend quality time.
I didn't say it was.
I know it. I didn't call. Did I call your name?
Most white Americans still think of America as the dark continent.
I think the media creates that perception. I think the media has a lot of responsibility in that narrative.
And white America.
Just so real quick, Armstrong, Africa is not waiting anymore for the cavalry called USA. Through the Afro-XM Bank, they are supplying loans for the businesses there. So they're stepping in, and the Afro-XM Bank has grown exponentially within the last few years, so they could supply the needs to the African leadership, to the African business and the entrepreneurs, because in 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world would be are African, and they're going to supply the labor force and also the consumer base as well.
Africa can also address the inequality and the poverty in their country as well, take care of the poor. There's just too much poverty. Vast poverty.
40 million Americans live under the.
Yeah, but we're not talking about America right now. We know America's problem. I'm talking about Africa. But anyhow, Marcia, girl, you look good. Let me tell you something now. You look good. But I can say that.
Can you say that on national TV?
Yeah, that's not a rap.
Girl, you look good.
Marcia, do you have a problem with me telling you that you look good? You have a problem with it? No, not at all. Please, Scott, you look even better. You lost weight. You lost so much weight. You look great. So I'm proud of you too.
Don't clean it up.
Okay.
You went
when
to
we
her
come
first.
back, we're going to talk about crime in America with DOMINICK, IZZO, former police officer with Chicago for 16 years. Don't go away. My man, DOMINICK, IZZO. I love the American flag. And boy, you sharp today. Let me tell you, everybody's dressing up today. Hey, listen, let me get to the bottom of this. You were a Chicago police officer for 16 years. I want to talk about
Chicago area.
Chicago area.
CPD.
Yeah. If you were advising leaders today, mayors or whatever, what are the first 3 actions you would take to reduce crime immediately across this country?
Change the standards of cops we're putting on the street.
The second one?
Change the standards. It's 100% no. I would focus on that. There's nothing else.
What would you change?
We have some of the most worst candidates in the history of law enforcement on the street, because police departments are focused on more of a social agenda than anywhere else. You're looking at, there's a legitimate agenda called the 30 by 30 initiative, and it is spearheaded by a former police officer and an academic who has no police experience. And the concept is they want 30% of the police force to be females by the year 2030. And some of the claims are that females commit less excessive force than males, which is a completely unfounded and impossible statement to make. The social agenda has been to getting more humanizing the badge. You know, we want more cops in the last 10 years to be seen as they've got families, they've got to go home to their families. Social media has done this, and we have replaced the humanizing the badge with where we're supposed to humanize the people that they serve. Fitness standards, you'll be hard pressed to find a police agency in the United States that has a fitness policy where their officers must meet basic level of standards, because unions will step in and they'll destroy it. So right now, everyone wants to talk about recidivism. Everyone wants to talk about increasing crime. We have some of the worst police officers in American history on our streets right now because we have lowered the standards to a threshold where anyone and anyone can get a badge, and it's doing disservice to the Constitution.
I must admit, I'm not mad at you, because some of them look real healthy, and I look at some of them when they're involved in a situation, they're out of breath, they cannot run, they cannot live. I've seen the assailants just push them aside as if they're toothpicks. I've seen it. So listen. What long-term investments, Dominic, actually work even if they don't produce quick headlines?
Well, you have to go back. What you just said, here's what the public doesn't realize. What you just said is extremely important. You've seen fat, out of shape, cops can be pushed to the side. The lower quality of candidate that we put on the street, that changes the lens of what's called objectively reasonableness, right? The public doesn't understand why cops use force, or we'll talk about use deadly force. Cops shoot an unarmed man. Cops shoot this. They don't understand why. The public thinks that it's the job of the police officer to be the administrator of punishment on the street. But everything you just said plays a crucial role in our law enforcement. An officer who is out of shape isn't that you can't say, hey, how's your blood pressure today? Or an officer who's 4'11" and a female, an officer who doesn't train because a union step in, they are covered by the objectively reasonableness standard to go to their firearms at a quicker pace and hide behind objectively reasonableness and shoot and kill. The public doesn't see this. They just see it's a uniform, it's a badge, I have to back the police. The bottom line is, the poorer candidate you have on the street, the more that we do not demand standards of our cops, the quicker they can shoot and kill American citizens and lawfully get away with it. And it's happening more and more. There's video evidence.
Well, I've seen it. I mean, quickly, before we go to break, where should the balance be between enforcement and prevention, media, politics, and narrative?
Enforcement and prevention, command presence is the number one, right? I'm not a very tall man. I'm 5'7". But to compensate for my lack of presence, I made sure that I was in shape. My uniform looked good. It was tailored. My boots were polished. And I took myself seriously, and I had knowledge of the law. So that when you showed up, you knew, ooh, this is a professional police officer. That's prevention as far as it can go. If the public, because so many people who support the police, they keep saying that, well, maybe if the public complied, we wouldn't have an issue. Correct. If the public complied, you wouldn't need law enforcement at all. So the onus has to be, if we're talking about police officers, that has to be 100% focused on them. The mayors, the police chiefs, sheriffs, they can't worry about what the public does. They have to worry about the standard of A, B, and C. My police officers, my police officers, my police officers, they are the foundation of everything I focus on.
And we'll be back. Dominique, how much of the crime debate is shaped by political agendas rather than facts on the ground? And do media outlets have a responsibility to report crime differently or to avoid distortion, either exaggerating or downplay it?
I wish to God media would do their jobs the right way, but we know sensationalism sells, the aspect of getting your story out first. I wish that politics, I wish that more leadership in law enforcement was leadership instead of management. And anybody who has worn the uniform for any lengthy amount of time, right? You need just a couple of years. You'll see that your brass, they're managers. They're not leadership. And they're doing everything they can to keep their job and not do their job. And sadly, the American police officer, this is my personal and professional opinion, they're the greatest human being on the planet when they do the job right, because they have to do the job according to the Constitution, state laws, and policy. And along that, they have to shelve their personal issues with any subject whatsoever. But you're not going to be backed by the brass when that happens. We see how many cops are lawfully involved with use of force issues, and they're terminated, charged where we have so many cops who are not investigated, not charged. These men and women are walking on eggshells all the time.
Let me stop you there because I've got 90 seconds. What was your first reaction when you saw Secret Service and law enforcement response to the shooter at the White House Correspondents' Dinner?
Crossfire, number one, but number two, I can't really speak to them because I'm not federal agent trained to their tactics. I don't want to put my hat in that ring for that.
Okay, finally, we hear that crime is down in some categories, yet many Americans feel less safe. Why?
Perception, whatever the media is telling them. Look at Chicago. How many people out here think, oh, it's such a safe town? But then again, you're seeing nonstop video evidence of criminal behavior that's just completely out of control.
And is there a fear of crime today driven by data about what people see on social media and local news?
I think it 100% is. I've said it a million times. You look on your social media, it tells you nonstop to be terrified of something. Put the phone down, go outside, and look outside your front door and go, wow, it's not the same. So I think that social media 100% skews our reality.
What are the crimes rising that not getting enough attention in 20 seconds?
I couldn't tell you. It's the agenda. You don't, if you're in a neighborhood where you're a mayor, your political party, you don't want the crime statistics getting out. We know that a lot of stories are buried. A lot of bad stories are buried.
Let me tell you, you're one of my favorite guests, Dominique. You call it like it is. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, in the National News Desk, WJLA 24/7. We're out of here.